Good to go, boss.
Let's go ahead and share. Let's go ahead and share. Welcome to Inside of the Pastor Study. So glad that you have come as we prepare for another great program on tonight. We're just elated to have our special guest with us. And on tonight, we got another great program for you. You see the title, Tradition versus Relationship. I want you to please, as we begin to get started, to like, to share, and to comment on tonight. Like, share, and comment on tonight. We'll give you a few minutes to do so. Pastor Collins is in with us on tonight. He's actually going to be our host. Come on, say something to the people, Dad.
God bless you on tonight. Thank you all for tuning in to Inside the Pastor Study with me and my good friend, Pastor Marcus Jones, and our special guest that we have. Thank God for Pastor Clifton Caldwell, all the way from Chicago. We're glad to have him on tonight. It's pastor of the church, New Prospect there in Chicago. He says it's a country town, but I thought the country town was here in Texas. But glad to have you on, and we thank God for Pastor Ivey as well. I'll let you introduce your guest, Pastor Marcus Jones.
All right, yeah. Also, we have tonight Pastor Stephen T. He is the youth pastor of the St. James Baptist Church in Arkansas, and actually, he's also a musical artist. He has a few CDs. I'm gonna let him introduce himself, kind of get us acquainted with some of the work that he's done. I follow this guy through one of our pastor pages, and I love his introspect on the word. Pastor Ivey, go ahead and introduce yourself, sir.
Yes, sir. Let me first say thank you guys for allowing me to be here with you all. I'm looking forward to the conversation. But just a little bit about me. I am a youth pastor here in Fayetteville, Arkansas, and I happen to be what they call doubly gifted, I guess. I've done a little music, so I produce as well. I'm a pastor producer, and so you can find my music anywhere that they sell it digitally: iTunes, Google Play, Amazon, Tidal, all of those places, just by putting my name in, Stephen Ivey. And currently, I have two projects released. There's a Christmas album, and then there's a praise and worship album that I did. And back in 2013, I actually produced a live recording for my church. So if you look for St. James Baptist Church, you would find us with the album out there as well.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Before we get started, we're actually going to shout out to our other co-host who's not with us tonight. He's actually at the memorial prayer vigil for those who have died due to police brutality. We want to give a big shout out to Pastor Marshall H.D. Johnson. Amen. He's going to send us some content that we'll be able to put on our page concerning the things that's going on downtown in Tyler, Texas on tonight. Pastor Collins, is in your hands, sir. All right. I don't know. Can he hear me? Can you hear me, sir? All right. I don't know. It looked like he kind of froze up on us. We're going to go ahead and go on anyhow. He can come back in. Let me just kind of break the ice a little bit. Pastor Caldwell, I'm sorry, you didn't get to introduce yourself. Go ahead, sir.
All right. Grace and peace. Thank God for the invite to be able to share with you brothers tonight and all of those watching virtually. It is indeed an honor to be here. I'm looking forward to the conversation. I am Cliff Caldwell, senior pastor of the New Prospect Baptist Church. Been around preaching over 30 years. In my 22nd, 23rd year of pastoring, my fifth year at New Prospect, my second assignment. We are known as Love by the Lake. Our church is directly on the lake, little small lake called Michigan, on the southeast side of Chicago. So we are grateful for the privilege to serve and excited about what God is doing, not only in the southeast side of Chicago, but also through our nation.
Amen.
All right, awesome. Did you guys get to catch the funeral on today?
I did.
Indeed. It was funny that when
what was y'all's thoughts on that?
When I saw Al Sharpton in his white robe, I knew he was on a mission, that he was coming ready to take care of business, and he did not disappoint.
No, he didn't. No, he didn't. He brought the hammer, and now we were with the nails.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Pastor Ivey, what was your thoughts about it?
So mine probably
All right, I'm
just a
having
little
some
bit
issues
differently.
over here, guys.
I enjoyed it all, but I realized, and I think every time we see a national funeral, we learn that we are all the same issues that we have in our town with keeping people in their time limit, doing what they're supposed to do, even on the national stage. Those issues still occur. But I really thoroughly enjoyed the funeral as well.
But we have to salute Dr. Ralph West. We got to salute Dr. West.
Yeah,
you're right.
I mean,
He's a man of order.
In the midst of all of that,
Sir.
he stayed within that 2 minutes and gave a mighty word and walked away.
In 2 minutes, and then dropped the mic. Yes, sir.
So it can be done.
It can be. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And one thing about inside of the pastor study, we don't want to be no punks in the pulpit.
Amen.
Yeah, man. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We don't want to be no punks in the pulpit. Pastor Collins, it's in your hands, Doc. Oh boy. You there? All right. I'm not sure what kind of connection he on that Wi-Fi, not that Wi-Fi. We got to get him straight. But let's go ahead and dive into the conversation on tonight. I'm excited about this conversation because it's an age-old conversation from the church, especially even growing up. Some things that we saw in the churches that we grew up in, opposed to now where we are in life. There's some rituals or some practices that we have been embedded into our spirits and souls that we just believe were the gospel truths, and then later on in life we've come to find out that that's not actually so.
Absolutely.
So tonight we wanted to really talk about tradition versus a true relationship. I was reading an article on today, and the article said that Christianity says that you can't do. You have to trust in the one who has done it for you, whether it's you're in the Catholic, you're Islam, or etc. Every other religion in the world teaches a works-based salvation.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But Christianity is the only religion in the world where you are justified by grace through faith in Christ alone. Religion keeps you in chains, but Christ has set you free. Pastor Caldwell, what do you think about that statement?
I think that's a very true statement if applied in proper context. And what happens is the church, we have a tendency to take it out of context and literally put the chains on the body of Christ. So if we're going to be free, then we ought to operate free, and not just be free, but be liberated. And I think that's the word that, especially in the African American church, we have a tendency to skip over because we don't think that it's applicable.
All right, Pastor Ivey.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Pastor Caldwell. I've taught several times. I try to teach our youth doctrine, and so whenever we talk about salvation and God's free gift of grace to us, one of the things I tell them is that because it's free, one of the things I know that we try to do whenever somebody gives you something free, somewhere in our mind we're always programmed to think, man, it really ain't free. I got to do something. I got to pay you something. And so I definitely agree with that there should be freedom. There is freedom, but we have to really believe it and accept that it really is free.
I think what happens is we get so stuck in the doctrine, in the dogma, that we really, when we look at it, and it says that we're saved by grace, should any man should, unless any man should boast, and we're looking for, there's got to be more to it than this.
Yeah.
There's got to be more to it than this invisible God sending his only begotten son to pay a debt for me without even knowing who I am. What's the catch? What do you want me to do? How much is this going to cost? My parents tell me that if I give it to you, you don't value it as much. Yeah. But if I have to earn it, salvation, then I cherish it more. So if I'm 17, 16, and you give me a car, if I total it, guess what? It's no loss on me. But if I have to pay the note and the insurance and the maintenance, I'm gonna be very careful about how I deal with that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I believe that some of the practices that we were taught, not necessarily the things that we ought to be doing as Christians, because there was a lot of things that Jesus did away with.
Absolutely.
Now there are some traditions that are good in its place. Mm-hmm. But one thing that Jesus came to teach the people is don't let that tradition get in front of God.
Absolutely.
And see, they couldn't take him healing on the Sabbath because of tradition.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, even when you look at the church today, there are so many things that we do in church today that we don't know why we do. When you start looking at ushering, and you ask any usher, whether they get on their white uniform, black uniform, whatever, and you ask them why they, number one, wear gloves, they can't tell you. Yeah. And why they put a hand behind their back, they can't tell you. And then when you teach them that it's a slave mentality, what do you mean? What do you mean? Okay, the slave owner said that when you come to church, that we want you to put on a glove so that the black skin won't touch the white skin. And that we want you to put a hand behind your back, especially when you're holding the offering, so that you won't be tempted to steal.
Yeah.
In my first church that I pastored, I had a lady who's dead and gone now, that she would always, when she get ready to walk out during service, hold her finger up. And when I told her that that's basically asking slave master, may I be excused to go to the bathroom, she had a hard time adjusting. And so one Sunday, I'll never forget this, I was up doing my reflections and she had to go to the bathroom. And so she gets halfway in the aisle, halfway out of the building, and she just says, oops. And then the finger goes up. And when I tell you, I was through. I was done because of tradition. I'm one of them silly guys. Because she was just like, oh, wow. But it's those things that we constantly do. Women wearing pants. I don't know how it is. I spent some time in Kentucky in the South. And back in the day that we could be outside playing softball. But when it was time for choir practice, my cousins had to go home and put on a skirt.
Yeah.
They had to put on a skirt because they could not go into the church with pants on. And I started pastoring, and I went to see my mother in Kentucky. And I walked into the church, I saw ladies in pants. I mean, I stopped like, whoa, what is really going on?
Yeah.
You know, and so those old traditions. And so, you know, I keep asking my members, why do we do what we do?
Mm-hmm.
Why do we take communion on the first Sunday?
Yeah.
We've always done it like that. But why?
Yeah.
We've always done it like that. But why? Because that's what we want to do.
Yeah.
We do so much that we think is tradition.
Yeah.
But when you start, you know, unpacking the text, and especially when Jesus said on communion, you know, as often as you do it, which means if we skip a month, you're not going to die and go to hell.
Yeah.
But they be like, well, ooh, Pastor, we missed first Sunday. Who Lord, I got to call somebody. They got to bring. Come on.
Yeah. I heard a story one time, and the story was one day a woman was cooking a pot roast, and she was cooking this pot roast. She called her mother and said, "Mom," I think it was Philip Pointer who told this story. "Mom, you know how do I tell me how I need to cook this pot roast?" And so her mother told her, and she said, "Hey, make sure when you put that pot roast in there, you cut the ends off of it first." And so she's like, "What? Well, Mama, why do I need to do that?" Mama said, "I don't know. Call your granny and ask her." And so she called Granny, and Granny said, "Yeah, that's how I learned that you cut the ends off and put the pot roast in there." And she said, "Well, Granny, why do we do that?" She said, "I don't know. Call your big mama, my mother, call your great grandmother, and let Big Mama tell you why." And so she calls Big Mama and said, "Big Mama, you got to help me. Mama and Granny told me I got to cut the ends off of this pot roast before I put it in the oven. Why do we have to do that?" And Big Mama said, "Well, I don't know why they're doing it, but I cut the ends off because I just didn't have a big enough pot."
Yeah.
And so what we end up finding is in my opinion, I think sometimes tradition can become honestly a form of idolatry because we put blind faith in it without ever asking the question, why? Where did this come from? Why are we doing it? What's the power in this?
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
That's good.
I saw another quote. I saw another quote that said, "Religion is a guy in church thinking about fishing, when relationship is a guy out fishing thinking about God."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, we can go to church every week and get so comfortable that what's going on in church might not faze us. We in there thinking about our bills. We thinking about folk we owe. We thinking about what we gonna cook. We thinking about the party that's gonna happen on next week. Whatever. We have to have a relationship to where we go in thinking about His goodness and lifting up holy hands and true worship. Because you know we said yesterday on our show, true worship is from the heart.
Right.
Yeah.
It's from the heart. And if you going for any other thing, you just going in vain.
Yeah.
But I think, preacher, what we miss is this one little concept in worship called intimacy. And every time we talk intimacy, we think that we take it to the sexual context. And it's not just the sexual context, it's just that alone time. You know, that if I'm single, that I ought to be willing to learn how to date God. That when I set my table for dinner, I ought to set a place for two and invite God in. I've got to be willing to spend time to make the relationship work. And the only time to do that is that I've got to get intimate, which means I've got to be willing to turn the TV off, turn off social media, and spend that alone time with God. And it seems like when you tell Black church folk to get along with God, we get scared. We think God's about to tear something down and move us. And it's basically saying, how can you get to know, how can you worship me if you don't know who I am?
Yeah.
Ooh, my God.
That's good. That's good.
That's real good.
That's real good.
Yeah, that's relationship.
I mean,
Yeah.
you get. I mean, that relationship is built off of the trust you put in him.
But how do I trust you if I don't know you?
Yeah.
I go back on what grandmama said. Well, he's a battle axe. He's bridge over troubled water. How can I, if I'm 15, how can I get up and testify he's bread when you're hungry? You 15, you ain't ever missed no meal.
Right.
So what happens is, based on tradition, I'm repeating the testimonies of those that came before me. But because of my relationship, I may not know him as a bridge over troubled water, but I do know him to be a way out of no way.
Yeah.
Based on my relationship, what he's done for me.
Yeah. So hearing you say that, just I heard being the difference between being irrelevant versus being relevant.
Yes, sir.
And I say that, and not to, if anybody, anybody knows me, I'm a young old man. I love all of the churchism. I'm with it. Matter of fact, I'm so churchy that I've taught my kids that y'all, whenever I preach and y'all hear me go to the cross, it can be on a Wednesday night or Sunday morning. When I get to putting Jesus on that cross and I take him off, y'all know when I get to that third day, y'all help me say early. So it's a big thing now in our youth ministry, the children and the teens. When I say early, it don't matter. They gonna get with me early. But what I've done in that, it goes back to that telling the why. Yes. So it could be just a fun way for us to have this traditional experience, or this tradition where we just screaming early and don't know why we're screaming it. But I used it to teach the importance of Jesus rising, not late on Sunday, but early. His intentionality of rising early that third day morning. And so, but in hearing you say that, I heard irrelevance and relevance, and that sometimes when we look at the unchurched population now, I think some of it is because the church has stuck our flag in the sands of tradition, and we've missed out on relationship with God and with people. Because really, when we look at that, the two greatest commandments, to love God and to love people, it's both vertical and horizontal. Absolutely. I can't love God and that love not translate this way. Absolutely. And I think maybe I'm this just from my small vantage point, maybe that's why sometimes our churches lack relevance, because we're having a very traditional experience, but it's not people coming in, like the Psalm says, entering into his gates with thanksgiving, entering to his courts with praise, being thankful unto him and blessing his name. I don't call people's names that I don't know. If I don't know you, before I met you, Pastor Caldwell, all I knew is I was getting on this conversation with a gentleman from Chicago. That's all I knew. So even my friends that I have that are in Chicago, I couldn't even text them and say, "Hey, y'all, I'm going to be on blah 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 with whoever, whatever." Right. But then when I saw your name, I hope I'm not being too simple and people think I'm trying to be deep. It's really simple for me. But when I knew your name, then I was able to text another local pastor that's there in Chicago, Pastor Staten, and say, "Hey, man, do you know Pastor Clifton Caldwell?" And then he was like, "Yeah." Yeah. When I know your name, when I know you, when there's some form of relationship, even relationship building, then I can call your name and we can enter into a relationship. And it's not just this traditional, really vague type of existence.
It makes a difference.
Yeah.
You know, we've been around the church and we've heard the old preacher tell the story about being at a funeral, and this fella that's been to the seminary, got the earned degrees, gets up and recites the 23rd Psalm, proper and prim. And then the old man gets up there who ain't been to school and, broken English. But because of relationship, he knows the shepherd.
Yes, sir.
Because of relationship. And that's what, and I hear you. that here we are in 2020, and we've got to ask ourselves, I ask all the time, is what we're doing, is it relevant?
Yeah.
Is it relevant?
Yeah.
Because again, we can do so much stuff in tradition. And I'm one of them that, I mean, at this point in ministry at my age, I really don't care about tradition. I honor tradition. But if we do communion on the first Sunday, we do communion. If we don't, the people be like, you the pastor. And if God told you don't do communion, guess what? We're good with that.
Yeah.
Based on relationship.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And so we got to make sure that we're relevant to the point where we're not allowing the millennials to come in and get stuck in tradition.
Yeah.
You know, I appreciate my people that I serve at the St. Mary Baptist Church. I've actually been able to do communion not just on first Sundays. I've switched up Sundays and not had a problem with the membership saying, now, wait a minute, Pastor, that ain't the way we do it.
Yep.
And so you can appreciate people that's not so stuck on tradition.
It makes ministry flow. A couple years ago, we get hot. We get, Chicago only got 2 seasons, cold. We got snow and hot. And it was hot. And I stood in, I want to say one Sunday, next Sunday church, it's dress down Sunday. We're doing jeans and t-shirt. One of the mothers of the church, who is still alive, gets up and says, Pastor,
I ain't wearing.
I don't know if I want to see my pastor in the pulpit with jeans on and a t-shirt. I said, well, Mother, I done said it now, and so that's what is gonna happen. And so she said, I don't know. The next Sunday she comes in, I mean, sharp, got on her hat and everything else, but on top of her dress, she got on her church t-shirt. Because she said, if my pastor's doing it, it's all right. And we've got to let them know that what we wear has nothing to do with the effectiveness of the word. But because tradition says that the preacher got to have on a suit, he got to have on a tie. I broke tradition years ago. I am not a long tie fella. I have not worn a long tie. Like I said, been pastoring 20 years.
Wow.
I wear bow ties.
Let me say this.
Okay.
I think it's different. It's different for, I think, what we would call seasoned preachers. Me being 37, I think it's a little different. The perception of people, how they view a younger pastor, and what we can get away with. Unfortunately, it's that way. I went to a church one night here in this area, and I had my church shirt on, which is somewhat like this with our church logo on it. I visited that night, and what we agreed to do as a church body was wear our polo shirts together on Wednesday night during revival season. And here in East Texas, revival season going on. It's a revival going on every week, 2 or 3 of them for weeks at a time. So on that one night, we teach our church that we should be a one body, one sound mind, and so on and so forth, be in unity. So I was convicted with the fact that I'm in a 3-piece suit, but I'm asking the church to wear our church polo shirt. Well, it's kind of a contradiction, especially when we preach from the fact that God is not concerned about the outward man as opposed to the inward man. We preach that, but then I caught some flack behind that because I got a phone call right after that service. It was very disheartening too. Y'all need to teach y'all's pastor how to dress. You don't need to go to guest churches with up in the pulpit with a polo shirt on. I got fired up behind that, and I'm just like, man, really? So I don't know if it was more of an age issue, and I came in there with our church shirt on, and I looked too youthful, I didn't look prestige enough to be in the pulpit, or is it a matter of people set in their ways more than it is of that?
So for me, that's just straight tradition. That's just straight tradition. And so you start arguing the point of the old preachers versus the younger preachers. The old guys would say that when you go out, tradition says you put on a black suit, blue suit, dark gray suit, white shirt, tie, and you don't go up unless you've been asked up, all that other stuff that goes with that. But I mean, I'm the same way that when our church goes out, especially in the summertime, look, choir don't put on no robe. We're going to wear this color. I'm coming in there, Lord knows, I may come in there, with just a church T-shirt on.
Mm-hmm.
But all of us gonna be together, and then at times I'm sitting with them in the congregation, and people be like, "Okay, where the pastor at?" Depends on who's looking for him. And so we've got to understand that when it comes to a tradition. There was a question that popped up about, when we force our children to join church and get baptized. I was one of them that I was told, go. And so my testimony is that I got baptized at age 8 because I was told to, but I didn't get saved until later on.
Yeah, Doc.
Yeah, somebody gonna catch that later on. Because of tradition.
Yeah.
We all got stood in that line.
I think probably all of us in this circle was made to go down.
I was pushed.
I think all of us in this circle, was made to go down and sit in those chairs. Pastor Ivey, what do you think about that comment that Miss Collins has on here?
Yeah, so I actually have a different experience. My grandfather was also a pastor. Now, I will say in my early age, my grandfather was very traditional, and I got to see him as he became older really drop a lot of those traditions. But one of the things that I so appreciated about him, and I asked my mother, he's no longer with us anymore, but I asked my mother a few years ago, because I remember getting baptized at a young age. I was probably 6. I was anywhere between 6 and 8 when I got baptized. But what happened, it was really a desire in my heart. And it was so much of a desire. I think at first I wanted to do it, of course, as a kid, because I saw other people getting baptized.
Yeah.
So I went down, and I don't know, like I said, my grandfather was a pastor, so I don't even know if I went before the church first, or if my mother just sent me to talk to him, and we just had a grandfather-grandson conversation. But I do know from what my mother told me, because I don't even remember this. I remember what she told me. My grandfather refused to baptize me because when he asked me questions, he didn't feel like I was ready. He felt like I was doing it just to be doing it. And so I think there was some time, a long time between that. I came back to him and said, "Grandpa, I want to be baptized." And whatever questions he took me through in that moment affirmed that I was ready. And then he allowed me to go before the church. And my grandfather, we're from Oklahoma, so my grandfather pastored in Summit, Oklahoma. Back in the day, my grandfather, he didn't have a baptistry. So they didn't put me in a lake or in the river or anything. But I'll never forget, I got baptized at Rayfield Baptist Church in Muskogee, Oklahoma, because my grandfather didn't have a swimming pool. But all that to say that he put a big fence around just doing things really out of tradition, just because he wasn't impressed by his grandson just saying, "I want to be baptized," but he wanted to make sure I knew why I wanted to be baptized and what baptism meant. So that was beautiful.
I think it's a lot different now with our young people and how they're growing up. I don't think that they're actually the push like it was back in our day. Opposed to Pastor Ivey, he had a choice. He could wait. But I think there's so much more that they have learned, and so much more information that they get, that they can kind of make that decision. And he's actually a youth pastor. How do you all deal with that in your ministry serving the youth?
Yeah, that's a great question. So really what I've seen, most of our youth that have been baptized, it's kind of funny. It almost is kind of like I went through. These young people have conversations with their parents, and their parents kind of explain to them what baptism is and all that kind of stuff. And then when they feel they're ready, they'll tell their parents that Sunday, "Hey, I'm going walk down. I want to be baptized." And their parents, when the invitation comes, whether they're back there with us in children's church, or if it's what I call big church, when we were meeting, whatever the case. But generally what'll happen after they come down and be baptized, most people will come get me to come back and talk to the young child. And so in that moment, I kind of take how my pastor Reverend Bertrand Bailey Sr. used to do. And I asked him the question, the first thing I want to know is, did anybody force you? Did you make this decision by yourself? And then tell me what baptism is. Tell me what you understand salvation to be. And then when they say that, then we go on about our business. But we also don't leave them by themselves. So we take them through a class that we call new converts, that we allow them to go to that class and be able to learn even more in depth about salvation, about baptism, to give them hopefully a stronger foundation for their Christian journey.
Okay.
So what about those guys that don't get baptized, but yet still want to participate in the church?
So yeah, for us, we don't have you got to be baptized to be a member or whatnot. And this is really cool. So this battled some of my tradition, which I really didn't care. But I'm not a senior pastor, so I can't make rules on my own and on the spot. But I had a parent who, in order to take communion in the Baptist church, you have to have been baptized. Well, right. I had a parent who's also a teacher on our staff. And she pulls me over to the side one day and was like, hey, my son is, we're Methodist. We were Methodist. We brought up Methodist. And so my son never got baptized. But as a baby, he was sprinkled. So I know that for Baptists, you all do immersion. And for us as Methodists, we sprinkle. And she said, for us, that's baptism. So technically he's been baptized. So I said, well, you know what? I'm not the pastor, so let me go talk to my pastor and see how he feels about it. And for him, which I was perfectly okay with, he said we're gonna count it as a baptism. Let them take communion and all that. So all that to say that we're a lot less traditional. When we talk about pastors wearing jeans and t-shirts, that's probably my pastor's every Sunday get up most of the time.
Yeah.
My dad, I got a friend of mine that's on here right now, Pastor Jones. I hope my daddy watches tonight too, by the way. Who was having a discussion about being outside, because I've been preaching outside for the last couple of months. And my dad is one who he feels very uncomfortable not having a suit on. There have been some times that he's had an issue where he messed around and left his suit jacket on one day. Somebody had to run home and get the jacket because he just didn't feel comfortable being in the pulpit preaching without his suit on. And even though it's in East Texas, he's had a robe on when he's been outside preaching as well. So those it's a lot of things that stuck with people for a long time. But is that really important? How important is it?
I think we cannot minimize their level of importance, because again, if they've been taught and trained that this is proper, especially in that generation, we got to honor that. But at the same time, try to show them that there's a better way. My dad used to have an issue with me. I don't wear the Sunday hats. I'll grab a fitted baseball cap with my suit, whatever, wintertime, whatever. And my father would be like, you been to school? Yes, sir, I have been. How many degrees you have? 3, 4, whatever. And you wearing that? Yeah. And so other pastors started doing it. And so I saw him one Sunday and we were going out to eat. And so he grabs his baseball cap and I'm just like, whoa, dude, what's up? Well, my son is a pastor. And it's all right for him, it's all right for me. And so now when my dad goes out, fitted baseball cap.
Yeah, man.
And so it's basically validating where they are.
Mm-hmm.
But gradually pulling them.
I think we lost it. Yeah, it looked like it.
I'll say this in agreement with him. I think we definitely honor our seasoned saints. and we understand our seasoned saints. So I am a millennial. Pastor Collins, we're millennials, and so it's easy, right, in my brain to say, man, why am I going to wear a suit and it's 100 degrees outside, or why am I going to wear a robe and it's 100 degrees outside? And as a millennial,
Doc, I was just at my anniversary in some Air Max.
Say that again.
I was just at my anniversary in some Air Max.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I think
there, Doc.
Listen, I think it's important for us to honor what the older saints, I think we should honor their tradition while still, as you said, Pastor Jones, still being able to push that envelope to move us forward so that we don't get stuck. And one thing my pastor has taught me, you don't turn a big ship in a day. It's a long, slow turn that you take. And a lot of change is like death. Whenever something changes, there has to be a time for people to mourn, a time for people to kind of grieve that change, which when we look at, I think that's the beauty of COVID-19, that COVID-19 has made us drop all of our tradition. I mean, all of it. Folks can't meet on a Sunday. I've seen people that would not ever consider having a service outside, doing services outside, services. Churches that were adamant about not having live stream and not doing cameras and all of that are now having to use Facebook Live in order to connect with their members. And so I believe that COVID-19 has really caused us to move away from tradition. But I think also it's exposing a lot of us who have only had tradition and no relationship. And it's really sad. And I know you all as senior pastors, I know you all understand this very well and probably feel this pain or this hurt that some of our members are not prepared for COVID-19. Some of them are not connecting to the live streams. Some of them are not connecting on the Bible studies. They're not doing any supplement to feed their spirit. So in these last 3 or 4 months, spiritually, they're dying because it's been a tradition. Let me go to church on Sunday and kind of listen. But I'm just gonna live my life the way it is. And now this COVID-19, man, it's magnified tradition, this tradition and relationship, and showing the beauty of really having relationship versus tradition.
Yeah. It has forced us to break tradition, to get out, to actually put the Great Commission into action. First part of the Great Commission, Jesus says, go. And so since we would not go outside on our own, shuts building down. And so now we have no other choice but to break tradition. But even in that, we've got to make sure, and somebody put up a comment, making sure that we respect our seasoned saints, that I had to make sure that the older people, my most seasoned members that wanted to be in touch with the church, that I made sure that somebody went to them and showed them how to get on Facebook, how to use the conference line, just to make sure that they stayed in contact. And now I'm getting friend requests from 85, 88-year-old members. I'm like, come on. And then they'll call, Pastor, I sent you a friend request. You sent me a friend request? Yeah, last week. Oh, that was you. Yeah, it was me. So
they own it, man.
They're on it. And so it's for us as the pastor to make sure that we're feeding the sheep by any means necessary and not just giving them scraps.
Yeah.
And so the majority of my folks that are not logging on are those middle-aged, those I would say 35 to up to 50.
Yeah.
My seniors
people that already have access.
They're on for Sunday school. They're on for Bible study. If I call for prayer, and they've learned how to give electronically.
Right. Right.
So they are there.
Let's get you all's perspective on this question. Ms. Collins asked, do you think that Sunday school is traditional A lot of churches are getting away from it. So let's look at this question here for a moment.
Can I hop on that one?
Come on, Ivy.
Now, first off, let me say that one more time.
I said, that's my sister. I said, she's going to start something tonight.
Oh, that's your sister. I was going to say, she asking some good questions.
Yeah.
She asking some real good questions. So this is, and y'all can, we may differ, but for me, this is where I say, these are that's one of the traditions that I say is needed and is beautiful. Even if it needs to change the name or how we do it. One of the things I love about, and I can only speak from being a Baptist boy. One of the things that I love about the Baptists is that we had, especially when I was a younger kid, we had an emphasis on teaching and preaching the Bible, but really even teaching. And I know you gentlemen have, you've seen it happen over the years, and I saw it. I got the small little piece of it, and by the time I became a teenager, it was gone. And that's BTU.
Yeah.
That's really in some spaces Sunday school. The issue I have now as a youth pastor is when I was 12 years old, you could tell me about Abraham. I could tell you about Abraham, who Abraham was, who Moses was. Nowadays, these children don't know just the basic fundamentals of the Bible, because what I'm seeing now is that football takes precedence, basketball has priority, sports or cheer or whatever extracurricular activities that these children are in. This put me on my soapbox, but it takes the priority. And so now what we see in trying to be progressive, we don't know the word. And I think for Sunday school, knowing and learning the word of God is not as much of a tradition as it does help build relationships, because I know who God is by learning his word. And if I don't know his word, go ahead, Pastor Caldwell.
No, come on, finish, because I'm enjoying you.
So if I don't know his word, then I really don't know who he is.
But we're spending so much time getting away from the word into everything that is not of God.
Yeah.
The children know the cliches. Reach up and grab it. Call it hot. They know how to get a dance on. They know how to do a praise based on what they see adults do. But again, you ask them, who is Moses? Who is Noah? And they can't tell you. Matter of fact, there are some adults.
Yeah.
In the same situation. And so I looked at it, I evaluated, our Sunday school, evaluated all the time. I keep going to that basic question, is it relevant?
Mm-hmm.
Is what we're doing working? We changed curriculum. We've changed it a couple times. Even to the point where I wrote lessons.
Yeah.
And said, this is what we're going to teach. We've gotten away from traditional Bible study to a midweek service.
Mm-hmm.
Worship. Yeah.
Right. And now we wonder why our folk are quote unquote spiritually ignorant is because we're giving them too much sugar.
Yeah.
And that when trouble comes, they don't know a scripture to get them through anything. I'm let me get on my soapbox. I'm sick and tired of going to funerals and to services and people quoting part of a scripture. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy gonna come in the morning. And I'd be just like, well, give me the A part of that.
Yeah.
Resist the devil will flee. What's the A part? Give me the, but if I'm in Sunday school and Bible study, I get that. And if I don't do anything else, I don't claim to be the most prolific preacher, but you're gonna get solid teaching.
Yeah.
You're going to get some solid teaching. I'm going to hold my leaders accountable. I'm going to hold those that teach accountable. We're going to teach. We're going to talk. We're going to converse. We're going to evaluate. And if it's not working, we're going to change it.
Yeah.
Pastor Caldwell, You know, with this question, when we went to BTU, when we went to Sunday school, we learned the essentials.
Absolutely.
Now we got a whole up service because not just the young folk, but the grown folk can't find the scripture. All of these kinds of things because we don't value the teaching that we got back then. And yeah, is it relevant? I mean, that's a good question.
I
The
mean, think
teaching is
about,
still relevant.
but teacher, I'm talking about your
The
Sunday school. What's going on
Mhm.
at St.
yeah.
Mary's? Is it relevant? Is it making a difference? Or are we just doing it? Are we using the same publisher that we've been using since 1800?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna say this, that the teaching is always relevant. Maybe some of the styles, or maybe the makeup of everything. You know, if
But
you
but
still doing class 1, 2, 3, 4, and all that, you
but
know,
we
maybe
still need
some
to
of
make
that is outdated.
but we need to make sure that what they're teaching that is relevant. I have an issue with preachers
Mhm.
that are not preaching and teaching the word, but are teaching more of this prosperity. Everything is going to be all right in the morning type, and not really dealing with issues.
Yeah,
So if that's going to be their mantra, if that's going to be what they focus on, then I'm gonna be, basically, moving away from that. We've got to challenge our people, and we've got to teach. Thus saith the Lord.
yeah.
We
Can
got
I?
to.
Can I?
Well, I want to say something real quick about that. In order for one to, first of all, teach the word of God, especially being before God's people as a pastor, for one, there has to be a call. I think we got to deal with the calling. There are a lot of preachers now that are being told they look like a preacher, they dress like a preacher, they act like a preacher, so you must be a preacher.
Mhm.
But when we deal with traditions, I'm thinking about when I accepted my call into the ministry at 20 years old. I accepted my call up under my dad.
Mhm.
And first time I went to my dad, he sent me away. He's like, "Boy, you say what? You sure they came from the Lord?" And so he sent me on about my way. And my first time asking my dad about that, I was 17. And when I asked him, he sent me away. I was like, "Good." I was in the clear. And the next time I asked my dad, he said, "Son, I never forget. I was riding home from school, and one day I said, 'How you know you've been called to preach?' And he said, 'I'll tell you this, son. The devil wouldn't have made you ask me that question.' And that was all he said to me. I'm like, that's all you got after 30 years of preaching? That's all advice you got for me?" So, and that's what I'm saying. He pushed me back. But then upon accepting my calling to the ministry, there were some things that I had to do. To learn how to serve first. My dad asked me, I had to get his handkerchief. I was responsible for getting this Bible. I'm like, "Dude, you got two hands, you got 2 feet. Well, I mean, you just left out the office. Why I got to go grab your Bible? Why I got to go get your handkerchief? But it was serving. Not only that, I had to be at Sunday school prepared to teach. I had to be available for Bible study and so on and so forth. But now it appears to be that everybody is a preacher. That puts you in. You look like one. You got a little hoop or tune to you in your voice. You can be a preacher. But what the qualifications of a preacher?
Yeah.
That's what I would like to ask.
What are the qualifications?
Well, I know what the Bible says. Right now, we're about ourselves making preachers.
You got to know God. So, and I wholeheartedly agree with you. And I think the problem is that unfortunately there is a generation that is operating under the office, but have not been called into it. And they think that because I'm a preacher, I've got to dress a certain way, I've got to drive this, I got to do this, but their life is raggedy. All of us got issues, but when your personal issues become forefront and it's all over social media, you need to get your butt somewhere and sit down. Get your house in order first. I almost said something. I almost spoke in a heathen tongue. Before you try to preach over somebody. Y'all pray my strength in the Lord. But it just bothers me that those of us who are really trying to do what God has called us to do we've got to deal with these imposters. But Paul tells us in Romans, but there are some folk who have a form of godliness, but yet they deny the power thereof.
That's so true. That's so true. The form of godliness looks like church.
Yep.
It sounds like church. They know the gestures to make in church, but can they be the church?
Have no power.
When the folk ain't looking, when the pastor ain't looking, can they be the church?
And they ain't got no power. Can't do nothing. Can't pray the wet sells out of a wet paper bag.
I know that's right, man. I know that's right.
Y'all done got me sweating.
But we got to get these relationships together. A true relationship with God it can be better than any relationship that you can have. That song is so true. Can't nobody do me like Jesus. Mama, daddy, nobody can do me like Jesus.
So let me say this. I'm gonna try to be quiet. That when it comes to the relationship part, God says to Jeremiah, and I love this when it comes to relationship. Before I formed thee, before I knew you, I had already something for you in your mama's womb. So before I gave you a position, before I gave you an office, before I called you into work, I knew you. That's relationship.
Amen. Amen.
That's relationship.
Relationships will cause you to serve. I've had some issues before where I was serving some food at my church before. After service, I'm back there serving plates, so I may pick up something, go throw it in the trash, so on and so forth. And one member from a guest church one time, she said, "Pastor Collins, why you in here going to get plates and bringing us our food and napkins and stuff like that?" But the way I was taught for you to be a good leader, you have to first learn.
So on that same note, I think he got lost. Is that I get in trouble too, because as a leader, as a servant, as a shepherd, I need to make sure that all the sheep under my care eat before I do. And so if we're serving a fellowship meal, my table could be set. People could be at my table. I'm going to tell them to go ahead and eat. Pastor, we'll make your plate. No, don't make my plate. I want to make sure every person in this building is eating before I sit down to eat. Even on my anniversary.
Yes, sir.
And people are like, no, your people need to learn how to take care of you. My people know how to take care of me. They take very good care of me, but they understand that I am a servant.
Yes.
And my job is to show them how to serve. One thing, as it relates to the relationship, sheep and shepherds ought to be able to get along based on how they ought to smell the same.
Right.
I mean, the shepherd who's out there, sheep got bad eyesight. They're dependent on the shepherd because they have bad eyesight. They're not fighting animals. And so if they smell you and know that you smell like them, they're comfortable. But if you don't smell like them, now they got a problem. Now they feel as though they're prey. And what we see is that we get a lot of individuals, pastors, who prey, P-R-E-Y, on their members.
Wow. That's good.
Relationship versus tradition. Relationship says, I don't care what happens. I'm going to trust God and I'm going to serve God's people.
Wow.
Pastor Ivey said something earlier about how God has taken us from our traditions of regular morning worship. Now we're doing things a whole lot different. And I believe that this new normal is where we're gonna be. We're not heading in that direction no more. We are there.
Yeah.
Correct.
And if you cannot function without doing what you used to do, because that day is over. People now just a month and a half or 2 months or 3 months have gotten so accustomed to virtual church
Yes.
that it's hard to go back to the fundamentals of just a regular worship service lined out in your program.
Yeah. I told my leadership team last week on a call, I'm like, y'all have to understand that when we get back into the building, we will not do a service starts at 11:15 and go to 1:30. I said, we'll start at 11:15. The latest we will go will be 12:15. And that's with the choir singing 2 songs. And they were just like, why? I said, we've been out of church since the end of March. I said, not one time have we had to read announcements, make special appeals, or anything like that. I'm like, and the preaching has gotten shorter. There's not, I mean, there are no distractions. And if we think about going back to how it used to be, then this time that we've been out has been in vain. This is a time
but
where
see, I think the focus more now is more on the word than anything else.
Yes.
All that foolishness got played out. You ain't got folks running out doing announcements and stuff.
For some people, the foolishness has gotten out. There are some folk that are still doing 2-hour services virtually, and I'm still trying to figure out. On Zoom, I'm still trying to figure that out.
So if we would pay attention, and when I say we, I mean the body at large, COVID-19 really should be helping propel us into a deeper, stronger relationship. I loved it, Pastor Caldwell, when you said distractions. It's removed distractions. And the way you build a strong relationship is by silencing the noise and the voices and getting rid of all the distractions. Unfortunately, though, it's gotten rid of the distractions, but it's also allowed our house to be a distraction. So some people, they're not gonna get up, they're not getting up, they're not plugging in. But it's really a teaching moment for us to really tell our people, hey, man, this is the perfect season, the perfect time for you to be building this relationship. I was blessed, and I'll be quiet after this. I was blessed because I had an 8th grader text me 2 or 3 days ago and said, hey, Pastor Ivey, I'm really trying to get a stronger relationship with God. What do I need to do? I took him right to the word. Hey, let's start reading the book of Mark. We're going to start in the book of Mark and just read through the book of Mark, chapter a day if we can, and we're going to talk about what we see in the book of Mark. And so it is getting distractions out of the way, and it's really giving us time to make the main things the main things. The Lord has given us a clean slate. He's given us a blank page to say, okay, I know how church has been going. Pastor Dr. West said it this morning at the funeral, and it was talking about Mr. Floyd, but I think it could apply to this too, where he said, although God didn't cause it, God can use it.
Absolutely.
And although God didn't cause COVID-19, it wasn't God sending. I don't believe it was God sending a plague or a disease on America or on the world, but I believe God is using it to say, hey, I've noticed my church slipping. So I tell you what, in this season, I'm going to give y'all a blank page.
Right.
All of us, I was talking to a friend, none of us, no matter how old we are, except maybe my friend's 90-year-old grandmother, nobody has ever experienced a season like this where we're not meeting in church.
Right.
And so at least God is saying, at least for the last 70 years, I'm giving y'all a blank sheet to rewrite how you've been doing church.
Right. Yep.
Wow.
It's a beautiful season.
Yes, sir.
That was well said. What I've been able to see from my membership is you're finding more people that were probably sitting back and they was just coming to church. They love God. They love you. They can appreciate being at church. But now some of those same individuals that were sitting down, I've seen them now get to where they're more active, or I can count on them to do different things. So it's starting to get, you get the opportunity to see some different people that weren't actually in the forefront or the go-to people. Because, have some go-to members. But what it's done now, those folks that are on the sidelines, you're getting to see some of their gifts and their talents. So I've been fairly impressed with my members well with this season that we're currently in, because allowing other people that aren't that hadn't been the charter member, so to speak, they can now stand out, and you can see their gifts and their talents that God has instilled in them. So it's been a blessing.
God is raising up some Davids. They've been in the sheep, they've been out in the pasture, and we hadn't taken notice to them, and now they're coming in and they're being anointed and they're rising up, and they're going to be leaders. Yeah,
absolutely.
I want to say though, there are about 2 or 3 folks. I think these yo people, Reverend Collins, they acting up in these comments. In the
you see that, right?
They acting up.
And I'm trying not to say nothing about it, but since y'all done blasted me.
I mean, fortunately, one of them does have a good last name.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I saw that. Yes, sir.
And so, we also see the church during COVID that the church is actually, it has to increase its ministry.
Yeah.
How many churches, how many preachers, pastors can say that even in the middle of COVID-19, the church is growing numerically?
Yeah.
People are joining the church. They're joining the church. New members.
Yeah.
Who said, I want to be baptized. They're calling, they're texting, they're emailing.
Yeah.
And now the church has to accept membership without bringing them before the church, getting the motion from the deacon.
Come on now. Virtually.
Without that little transfer.
Right. So what do I need to do? Look, you want to come over here, you in.
Yeah.
We don't have time to be playing. And we don't. I want to be baptized. Look, baptism may not happen until September, October. But in the meantime, you will get the benefits of membership.
Yeah.
Amen.
And we got to get to the point where we understand that baptism is not required.
Yeah, Reverend.
It won't save you, Doc.
Go to Jesus.
It won't save you.
I mean, he saved the thief on the cross. And he didn't say, hold on, let me stop. Let's go to the Jordan. Let me baptize you.
This day.
He said, this day thou shalt be with me. And we've got to understand that we've got to learn how to use the word. I don't want to say to our advantage, but learn how to use the word.
Yeah.
And stand on it.
Yeah. So I'm going to throw this out here. This is going to be one of those very non-traditional things. But I've been hearing, how do y'all feel about a member, say someone who a newly saved person, or they want to be baptized? How do you all feel about handling a baptism over FaceTime or something like that, where you're not even present? Maybe there's not even a deacon there, but maybe it's a husband and a wife, or a mother and a father, or maybe it's a person there themselves that you're saying the words in obedience to the Lord's great command, and they're taking themselves down and coming up. What do y'all think about that?
I ain't got a problem with it.
I have put our traditions out. I have put our traditions out.
Yes,
Sunday, we did part of our service, and we served communion. And I wasn't worried about where was the white gloves. I wasn't worried about where the deacons. I said, let's give it out to the folk, and we're gonna take it. And we're gonna get out of this heat.
That's why you weren't worried about it.
Get your own bread.
Yeah.
Get your own bread. Get your own cup. Just make sure it wasn't a good wine.
Yes, sir.
Because someone try to sneak it in. But again, it's about how we do it and the motive, the intent.
Right.
And we can we don't want to keep getting stuck in tradition, because that we delay somebody's baptism.
Yeah.
And God forbid they die. Then what?
Matter of fact, we hold people up from getting baptized
because
the pool ain't ready, or we can't find no way to do it.
We're gonna wait till the first Sunday. We're gonna wait till the first Sunday. Because in generally, that's when we do it.
Right.
And generally.
Mm-hmm. Very
You
true.
don't know having a baptism on a Wednesday night. What?
That's
We do
beautiful.
it. We do it because again, it's about ministry meeting the need. There's an offering for every ministry at the church. That might be in Texas, not on the southeast side of Chicago. I'm sorry. See, that's big city. See, that's what y'all do in the big city. Y'all take 15 different offerings.
Lord.
Let me read this. James 1:26. It says, those who consider themselves religious and yet do not keep a tight rein on their tongues deceive themselves, and their religion is worthless.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Come on.
Yeah.
Give me your thoughts on it.
What's in your heart gonna come out, preacher.
Mm-hmm.
If cussing is in your heart, cussing is gonna come out. Yeah, I mean, we've been hearing it for years. What's in you gonna eventually come out. If lying is in your heart, it's gonna come out. If cheating is in your heart, it's gonna come out. So
I've got to make sure that
you said Galatians.
that was
James?
James. If I am confessing Christ, that my behavior exhibits Christ.
Reflects that.
Amen.
That if I'm a Christian, I've got to be Christ-like in not just my words, but also my deeds and my thoughts. Would I get tempted? Absolutely. But I've got to make sure that I don't kill anybody with this thing here.
Yeah.
I have to bring this thing under control.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, it's been a lot of verbal assassination going on out here, and not just from our other race of people. We verbally assassinate one another, but there's ever a time for us to come together. That time will be now.
Time is now, and we have to be very careful about what is said from the pulpit.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a place where we ought to be able to give hope and assurance, and not get up there and attack folk. I think when we were young in ministry, we did some crazy stuff. But I think as we mature, we don't use that as, that's holy ground. That we don't use that as a opportunity to attack folk that won't fight back.
Yeah.
Tell your sister she on time out.
My sister here showing.
Put in time out.
They acting up.
So let me ask her. She said there's not enough deacons to serve communion. What about female deacons?
Ooh, well,
Reverend, you shaking the pot.
He done did it.
Reverend,
did it.
Don't cut me off. I'm just asking questions.
Reverend, you shaking the pot now.
You taking it all the way up.
Hey,
I got
Facebook
one.
gonna cut you off, preacher.
I got one. That's
You got one, sir.
That's becoming the normal here.
Okay.
I mean, if you don't have enough men
See,
to serve,
you in the city.
what they got to do with
you? You come down here to East Texas with that if you want to. You come on down here to East Texas.
but should
Reverend, they're gonna put you out.
I'm serious. Should the work of the church be stifled because we don't have enough "quote unquote" qualified men?
Reverend.
Sorry, Sister Cooper, not a deaconess, not the wife of a deacon, a female who has all rights and privileges as a male deacon. That's what I have. I crowned her since I've been over there, and she serves well.
That's kind of touchy, but
why is it touchy? Come on, why is
she
it
gonna
touchy?
get it done versus.
I can't say that
thank you, Sister Cooper.
I can't say that we have verbally made female deacons, but I believe that the roles of the men sometimes lack, and women have been able to uphold some positions and do more in ministry than they normally have. Most churches are 80%, 75% women.
Female. Yep.
And they do most of the ministry work.
Yep.
I hadn't per se
really just going off a title anyway, Pastor.
Yeah.
I need to plug it. It's just a title anyway. I mean, there are a lot of deacons that carry the title, but it's the women that's going to be at Bible study, the women that's at Sunday school. They always outnumber the men. So if you're gonna get something done, it's the women doing anyway. The church get cleaned up, the women involved in that, the women involved in giving extra money, the women involved in. I mean, so when it comes down to it, I mean, we might be at a point right now we're gonna have to reevaluate some things anyway.
Absolutely. I mean, tradition says that only men can serve, but if the men are not serving, you mean to tell me that we're going to penalize women who are willing to serve, who are qualified to serve, because of their gender? So now we're not only dealing with tradition, now we're dealing with sexism.
Reverend, come on in here. Come on in here, Reverend.
Come on. I mean,
come on in here.
Now,
y'all open the door. Y'all open the door.
He asked me before the show, what's the format?
Listen, let me just say
Pastor
2
Jones.
words. I agree. Yeah.
I mean,
You agree? Yeah, I'm sure.
Let me go back to last Thursday to Al Sharpton. When do we, as the Black church, take our knee off our own people? When do we, as the Black church, when do we take our knee off of our people's neck?
Yeah.
We always say that the white man got his knee on our neck. How many necks do we have our knee on? Women can't do this. Women can't do that. Ain't a woman's job. Come on. It's 2020. Yeah. Maybe if we start, we talking about tradition. If we move it a little bit, and allow, I see your comment, Mr. Jones. But again, let's understand the context.
That's one of my members.
Here. I understand that, but let's look at when the Bible was written and all of the translations, even up to King James, who had his own set of issues.
Yeah, Doc.
Okay.
I mean, we
listening.
Let's have the conversation. Let's look at it. I'm not saying tomorrow you do it, but let's look at that.
Well, we are inside the pastor study,
so let's look at it.
Yeah.
That I don't have an issue with it. I mean, I've never had an issue with women in ministry, and so years ago, I'm trying to introduce it to my first church, and I'm like, okay, so how do I do this? How do I do this? And then they come to me. Oh, Women's Day's coming up. Can we get so and so? And I'm like, what? Sure. Absolutely. I have no issue with it. My job is to make sure that every person who confesses a call under my leadership, that I give them opportunity and I help develop them.
Yeah.
And let them serve. At the end of the day, I got to make sure that I'm using everything God gave me to teach and empower people. See, I done got some stuff started now. I done got some stuff started now.
No, you good, Reverend.
That's my wife coming. That's my wife coming to my men. Take your knees off our necks.
Oh Lord!
Hey, you got to lay down tonight, Doc. Trying to breathe. Let me find out where my wife is.
but I think that we lean more to what's traditional, and that's why we're having this conversation tonight. We lean more to what's traditional than what's relational.
Traditional with no basis.
If we got a relationship, and that goes for anybody, who says you can't serve here or there? there's a lot of people that don't agree with women in ministry preaching and those that are pastoring. My family comes from a CME background. I'm not as hard nosed as some other of my family members are. I will allow a woman pastor to come preach at my church. I know a lot of them won't. I don't care if it's outside the front door, they won't let them come, So I think there's a lot of openness that we have to get to if we're not going to be so traditional.
But
there's a lot of openness we're going to have to get to.
But can you tell me why we preach freedom and liberation, but yet we're stuck in the church? I mean, seriously, we talk God as a deliverer. He's a way maker, but only outside of the church. Because don't bring that new thought stuff up in here.
Right. I mean, a lot of the tradition that we have, we feel like we can take up money only one way. But we feel like we have to have a responsive reading one way. So a lot of this stuff, we just feel like it's only one way to do it. No.
So would you agree, Bro Pastor, that a lot of the traditions that we have is taught?
Oh, yeah. Most definitely.
Which means that if it's taught, then the new thought can be, you could be taught a new way.
Oh, yeah, of course.
The old adage is, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. That's the mantra of the Black church. We've always done it like this. But I beg to differ. I believe, I know you could teach an old dog a new trick if the dog is willing to learn.
And if they have a teacher.
I think we've got to be willing to at least explore, look at it. It may not be as difficult. There may be somebody waiting on, hey, we've been waiting on this a long time. But again, we've got to stop using tradition. And a lot of things that we do when it comes to tradition, we don't even know why we do it.
Yeah.
And then we use the scripture out of text. I mean, there are some guys here, some older guys on the west side of Chicago. We're part of the same state convention and national convention. But when it comes to women in ministry, they'll get up and walk out and use the scripture. Paul says women ought to be silent in the church. And my argument is, use it in context. Paul did not say that. Paul was saying that when they were trying to teach, the women were in the back saying, girl, I ain't seen you since last week. And he's basically saying, y'all making too much noise. Y'all want to chat like that? Talk at home. You'll not be talking like that in church. So we got to learn how to use the scripture in context, proper context.
Yeah.
And that's the only argument they can go. Well, but when you tell them, so what do you do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe
the Bible says,
the Bible says, wait.
What you say, Colin?
Proverbs 21:2 says this way. Proverbs 21:2. A person may think their own ways is right. So in other words, all of us, every man thinks they're right in their own way, in their own eyes. So ultimately, I believe we have a lot of opinions that we're dealing with, but we're not dealing with the word. We just need to stick with the word. Bible says we can't add nothing to it nor take anything away. So I think a lot of times we got a lot of people either going too deep or being too shallow. Either way, we can't add to or take from the word. So when we deal with matters such as this, we got to stick to the word or the content of the word.
But we've got to learn how to properly exegete the word and not just use it in portion. So if it says that he'll pour out the spirit upon all flesh, that doesn't just mean male flesh. And your sons, and your sons, he said sons and daughters. And so again, if we're going to use the text, then let's use the text. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm saying.
And so that was the point I was going to make. And I think some guys that I know that are hard set on saying that women should not preach and teach and all that kind of stuff. We'll argue round and round, but I really base my conviction off of that Joel passage. But even when Peter stood up, we just got through celebrating Pentecost, and Peter said, "Hey y'all, this is what that that prophet was talking about.
Absolutely.
God said, I'm going to pour out my spirit, not just
on
on
all flesh,
but on all flesh, and your sons and daughters will prophesy. Now, I hadn't done a word study on what that prophesy is, but I would assume that prophesy in that sense is not just a foretelling, but a foretelling.
Absolutely.
That your sons and daughters will be able to stand up and proclaim the goodness of the Lord, which was what was taking place in Pentecost.
Right.
That those people, whoever those 120 were, whoever they were in that upper room, when they got filled with the Spirit and start speaking in tongues, they were foretelling, they were speaking the marvelous works of God. And I don't believe God was discriminate in saying, okay, it's only going to be 120 men that's going to receive this. I believe that when God poured his Spirit out, it was available to all flesh. That as a Baptist, I believe that upon salvation, the Lord deposits his Spirit in us as a down payment, and not just for men and women. The same gift of the Spirit that's available to me is also available to my wife and to my daughters.
That's true. That's so
That's
true.
good. I was wondering if we was going to go over here.
Brother Jones,
you all right?
I know one thing. I know who's not going to get invited back.
Doc, I'm in the car with you, Doc. This may be our only one, brother.
Y'all are inside the basket.
Oh, this is good. This is good.
But you know,
it is.
We have to look.
Say it again.
I was addressing my trustee at my church, Brother Dexter Jones, said growth happens when teaching happens.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man. Yeah. That's good.
Is he a good trustee?
Look,
yeah, y'all all right. Y'all be invited back.
He picking now. He picking. He picking.
I mean, he got on the bow.
I can answer that question.
He got on the bow tie. I'm just asking.
He is.
He wearing a bow tie. You know, you got to watch them guys wear bow ties. That's the only thing I'm saying.
Right
yeah,
on.
he is, man. He is.
Hey, man, good. What were you saying, Jones? I'm sorry, man.
I think we have to. I know on one occasion Jesus was talking about the blinders over your eyes, and there's a lot of things that you don't see that you think you see. So in order for us to move, and this goes back to the thought that Pastor Ivey had earlier, in order for you to have a relevant ministry, sometimes it takes for us to remove the blinders off our eyes.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
I agree. I think
so.
With dealing with these millennials, that usually a challenge for some of us. One of their arguments is when it comes to tradition versus relationship is that they have an issue when they look at TV and they see one image, and then when they get to our churches, they see something totally different. So if they can watch a sister on television and then get to church and find out that same sister can be oppressed in the church, they have an issue. They don't want just a church that's going to be stuck on taking an offering and not doing anything. They want a mobile church. When you start looking at the Black Lives Matter movement, those are millennials who are basically saying that this is the work of Jesus Christ. We've got to get out there. We've got to talk social justice. The Black church used to do social justice, but now we didn't got, so politically correct. We don't want to do it. But we have to reclaim our prophetic voice. We have to, if we're going to be relevant.
And another issue they have with the church is they feel like the church is not real.
Absolutely.
They are a generation of doing opposed. They'll talk about our generation. Y'all want to sit around and talk in the back room when we want to be around doing something about what's going on in the back room.
Absolutely. So
yeah.
we're still looking at.
So I guess. Yeah. It's a lot going on right now. What are y'all thoughts on the? We're getting ready to wrap up. What are y'all thoughts about the protests that are going on?
Black Lives Matter.
Reverend, I was out there protesting. We had a protest here. I was out there in my all black. Had my wife make me a shirt that said "No justice, no peace," but it had the word "no" KNOW, no justice, no peace, with the NO highlighted as well. So it was sending two messages. So I was out there protesting. I will say one of the things that one of my only concerns is that in the protests, what I've challenged people that I know in our city that are wanting to protest, I'm challenging people to make sure that as we're out there protesting, that we come back and we sit around the table and we start working on changing. Because if all we do is get out and march and protest, but then there's nothing else that follows behind it, all we did was take a good walk and had some exercise and got our steps in. So I'm really trying to look at starting to study Dr. King and just his movement as a preacher, as a prophet in that realm. And what I'm noticing is whenever there was a protest, there was always meetings, there was always something that was coming behind it, or going in conjunction. And so protests without any plan is really just an exercise. But I'm all for the protests. I say get out there, lift up your voice. If you got to stop traffic, do it. And honestly, I may be the unpopular opinion, but my biggest worry is not on people that are looting and rioting, because I, as a black man, understand not what they're doing. I understand why they're doing it.
Absolutely.
And when you've oppressed me and you hurt me so bad, it's like my son. I can't get mad at him for rage. I can't get mad at him when he feels a certain way, when he feels bottled up and he has all of these emotions and this pain that he hadn't been able to let out. And it just shows itself in rage. And so when I'm seeing that looting and rioting, although I would never say do it, I'm also not going to condemn it in the sense because I really understand what's happening.
Yeah. And I agree. I was out. They've had so many. Been marching here every day. And I was actually out. They did a Southside clergy march last Tuesday. Powerful. Exhilarating to see different aspects of clergy, white, black, male, female, Hispanic, Jew, Gentile. We were all out there, no violence. It was powerful. And I agree, Ivy, that now what? And so that's my message on Facebook. Okay, all of the funeral is over with now. He's in the ground. Where, in the words of Martin King, where do we go from here?
Chaos or community?
Or community. And I think that's what we have to do. And this is our season as the church to break tradition. And let's get out there and let's cross denominational lines. Let's cross ethnic lines and let's come up with a plan so that we can make sure that this issue of racism ends. I challenged my white friends. If you're going to be my friend, you got to learn how to speak up.
Say something.
And just don't say, that's my black brother. No, I want you to be able to speak truth to power to those individuals that you know are guilty of this hidden racism. Speak up. And I think that's the issue with the black church is that we don't want to talk. We'll march, and then we'll get in there and we'll preach Sunday. Everybody gonna die and go to heaven, hallelujah, and squall and holler and sweat. No, challenge me. Challenge me.
Right.
And to answer your question, Cooper, there is no plan. There is no plan. I mean, seriously, before you jump in, we got to figure out who's going to be the leader. You know, and that's the issue in the black church. We don't have we have not identified a leader. Look, I like Jesse.
Reverend.
Jesse's season is over.
Reverend.
And so who will go for us?
Reverend, I was just about to say that.
Who shall we send?
Yeah, man.
I mean, and I hear Al. We don't need folks just looking for the camera. We need folks who gonna come with a plan that can allow us to have a kumbaya moment, but yet leave with a plan. Who is it going to be? Warnock? Come on, I'm sorry.
So let me jump in. I want to say this because this was another conversation that we had. If we look at the movement, and honestly, even when we look at Dr. King never wanted the position that he had.
Absolutely.
They sought him out, but check this out. Also, Dr. King was a young man.
Yep.
I'm not saying anything about older men, but to your point, when we look at Reverend Jackson, Reverend Sharpton, God bless them. Thank God for their service and their duty. But that's another tradition that we have to be willing to break. And I think the reason why we don't see any leadership is sadly because those giants of yesteryear never raised up other giants.
Yep.
So you look at Reverend Jackson, you look at Reverend Sharpton, they should have raised up somebody that was coming up that was coming up after them, and it should be the person that was coming after them, like a Warnock, and I'm sure he has sons in ministry and all of that. But then there should have been even a passing of the baton, even from his generation to where we should be seeing somebody in my generation as a millennial saying, this is our leader.
Yep.
This is the person that we get behind. Because honestly, young people, and honestly, maybe even younger than me, I'm only 32, so I'm still young. But even somebody younger than me, that's not married, don't have kids, that can give themselves to a movement, to leading a movement. And so that's it.
Because they too old. That's why it can't be them. They too old.
That's not what I'm saying.
That was a question. Why can't it be y'all? But I wholeheartedly agree. There's a book. Lord just left me. But the main point is that as leaders, our goal is to lead to leave.
Yeah.
So my job as senior pastor is to make sure that whether I retire at 65 or 70, or if I fall dead, that there's a plan in place. I'm grooming my Joshua.
Right.
Because at one point, somebody going to have to get up and say, Caldwell, my servant, is dead. And not just physically, but out of the way. And so who's back there? But we've got to do something. We've got to have continuous conversations where we can actually sit at the table and have honest conversations and do some stuff. Start holding major corporations accountable, saying, okay, you want to be part of the movement? This is what we need. And it's not always about the money.
I'm going to say this, and I'm going to step out on a limb, but I was a part of 2 meetings within the last 2 days. One with the Black leadership of our city. And then today I met with some pastors in the city that I pastor, Black and white. And in the meeting with the pastors that are Black and white, the meeting was more successful than the meeting with all Black.
Yeah.
And it's a sad indictment that we have to stay divided, that we have to keep this crab syndrome on you can't leave because you're not this, you can't leave because you're not that. And we never sit around and listen to one another. We got a lot to pray for. Let me tell you that this my experience on Sunday. I wore my I Can't Breathe t-shirt and I had a mask that said I can't breathe. And so after I left church, I went over to Pastor Collins. He had his anniversary just to support my brother for a little bit. Then I went to a restaurant to get me something. I went to a restaurant to get me something to eat, right? Y'all would have thought I was the cop killer when I walked in that restaurant. It's like the music stopped and everybody looked at me like, wow, who is he? What is he finna do? That's why we can't breathe now. Because you feel like you pass judgment before you even get to know us. You feel like we're a threat when we're not a threat. You know, every black person is not a crook. Every black person is not here to harm you.
Right.
You know, until our society comes to the place to where we get to know and listen to different people, different cultures, we'll always have that stigma of being afraid of one another. Yeah. And so that's what we're fighting for. That's what we're trying to stand up for. Hey, these injustices that not only go on towards blacks, but we're trying to stop it for everybody.
Right.
Just because we're tired of seeing it with the black race does not mean that it's going to just stop with us. It's going to stop for everybody when it does.
Right.
And we're grateful for all of our white brothers and sisters that are standing up and during this time. The whole world is standing up. And that I feel great about change getting ready to happen because, you know, what we figured out in the meeting is that when the white people speak up against what's wrong, their voice is heard.
Yes, sir.
Far more greater than our voice. And so that's a good thing. All of these things might look bad on the surface, but God is going to turn it around and bring some good out of it. Yes, I really appreciate our guests coming on tonight. We've been on a little while, but we've had some great conversation inside of the pastor study. I always want to end it this way, and I'm going to let Pastor Collins close us out. But Pastor Caldwell and Pastor Ivey, give the people that are watching something that the Lord has placed in your heart to encourage the people. Give us something, Pastor Caldwell.
So I will tell you, my brothers and sisters, that as we continue to deal with this pandemic of COVID-19 and Corona, as we continue to deal with these social injustices, I'm just led to what Paul tells the church at Rome, that the conditions that we're currently going through are not worthy to be compared to the glory that shall be revealed.
Yes,
in other words, there will be glory after this. There'll be some hard times, some difficult decisions. There's going to be some midnights, but I admonish you to hang on in there, because after this, there shall be glory. Look, it's been an honor. I've enjoyed myself, and I pray that it's been helpful. And I'm looking forward to future conversations.
Yes, sir. I'll say this. I'll say this. I want to just encourage you all, similar to what Pastor Caldwell said. We're in a season, at least for me, as I look at it, where I'm calling it a season of hope and healing. And, the Bible says in Proverbs that hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a desire or a longing fulfilled is a tree of life, I believe. And so I want you just to hold on to your hope, knowing that in the midst of hoping, one of these days that hope is going to be fulfilled, and it's going to be healing for your soul. So whether that's concerning the social injustices that are happening, whether that's with COVID-19, or whether that's just the vicissitudes of life that come, hold on to your hope, knowing that healing is on its way. Thanks again for allowing me to be a part of this. I enjoyed it.
Pastor Collins.
All right. Well, we definitely thank you guys for joining us on tonight. We thank everybody that tuned in inside the pastor study. We've had a great discussion, and y'all don't have to worry, Pastor Clifton. We'll be all right. Me and Dexter Jones. We've been going back and forth for plenty of years. But one thing about it, he is a Christian. So even if we don't agree, we'll still be brothers in Christ. So we're very thankful for you guys for chiming in, sharing your convictions and your outlooks on things that we're currently dealing with in our communities and in our churches. We are praying for you guys for where y'all are and where your ministries are, praying for your ministries during this pandemic. And thank you for making the sacrifice on tonight for sharing with us, little old East Texas boys down here in the Tyler area, went on the area in Lindale area pastoring. All right. So thank you guys for tuning in. Y'all need to please like and share this on tonight. Like and share. And our last words will come from our dad of the show, Pastor Marcus Jones.
Wow. Awesome, man. Awesome conversation on tonight. Just for our viewers, we won't have a show on tomorrow, but we'll be back on next week. We already got a good lineup in store for you, so you don't want to miss that. We'll actually replay our shows from this week, this coming weekend, starting Friday and Saturday. We'll replay our shows from this week. We pray Godspeed on our guests, your households, your ministry, and that God will continue to bless you all. Y'all have a good night, and thank you for joining us inside the Pastor Study.
All right. God bless.